Thank you. So I'm Laura Outterside. I'm Assistant Archivist, and this is Paul Williams, who is Archive Cataloguer, and we both work at the Sainsbury Archive, which is based in Museum of London Docklands. So today we're just going to tell you a little bit about our digitisation practices at the Sainsbury Archive. So just a bit of background about the archive if you're not aware of it. So the archive really covers the history of Sainsbury's from a family business which was founded in 1869 to a supermarket giant, which I'm sure we're all fond of. Sainsbury's first employed an archivist back in 1975, and its archive remained in-house within Sainsbury's until 2003. And since then, it's been owned and managed by an independent charitable trust, which means that we're now kind of separate from the business. In 2005, the archive moved to the Museum of London Docklands, where it's on loan. We're actually quite a small team at the archive, so at present there's the archivist, who's part-time, and then myself and Paul, so quite a small team. The collection is quite an unusual collection. It's a hybrid collection, so objects make up about 1/3 of the collection. So as well as the kind of typical core business records that you'd expect, we also have an extensive photograph collection, as well as film and audiovisual material. So I think because of this, by its nature, the archive is kind of skewed towards more visual material, such as photographs, advertising, and packaging. And I think that's because the company was kind of born, the archive was kind of born out of the company's PR department, so that's why it's quite a visual collection. So just a bit about our digitisation practices. So at the Sainsbury Archive, we take quite a responsive approach to digitisation. So we actually scan items in response to search room inquiries, in response to researchers, and also to remote inquiries. It used to be that our search room researchers were entitled to 6 free scans each, which was very generous of us. And this might include kind of family history, local history, academic research. So although it is a business archive collection, because we are run under a charitable trust, we do aim to support research and learning, and so we do have a history of kind of providing researchers with digital material where it's appropriate. So I'm sure you can imagine over the years our research inquiries have grown, and in turn so has the scale of our daily digitisation. And in our support of Sainsbury's, the company, we are quite responsive in nature as well. So a typical inquiry from the company might include requests for photographs if there's a branch anniversary, or scans of notable products or advertising. So Sainsbury's might be doing some kind of heritage marketing, heritage product. So we would provide content for that. So I think it's fair to say that digitisation is really part of our daily workflow at the Sainsbury Archive. So as well as this kind of responsive, kind of small-scale digitisation, we also digitise as part of larger projects, and that's really steered by Sainsbury's needs. So, for example, we provided digital content which was geared around themes such as Easter, Christmas, frozen food, for Sainsbury's marketing website, Living Archive. And this required us to actually scan hundreds of archive items to kind of source and scan hundreds of items from the archive. And I think a really important thing to know about our digitisation process is that it's all carried out in-house, and it's carried out by different staff. So we have archive staff at all levels, kind of carrying out scanning and naming files, but we also have members of staff from Sainsbury's working on digitisation. So Sainsbury's employ an archive coordinator who is quite involved in digitisation for us, but this person will not necessarily have a qualification in archives or experience in archives. So I'm sure you can imagine the result of all of this digitisation, all these different strands, is that we have many, many thousands of digital images which are stored on all of our drives, and most, if not all, of these images were kind of documented on an image log, which is just an Excel spreadsheet. And we're going to go on to discuss one particular project which kind of tackled the management of these issues. So, our ongoing project for the last few years has been preparing our archive catalogue for online launch. So at the Sainsbury Archive, we use Calm software, to catalogue and manage the collection. And as part of our project spec for launching the catalogue, we committed to putting 2,000 images from our drives into the catalogue in time for the launch. So that was kind of our situation. Our big task was that we had drives with thousands of images which could be added to the Calm catalogue. And we had an image log, so we had this mighty Excel spreadsheet which had a real mix of data and which had been compiled by a real mixture of staff over the years. So Paul is going to talk you through this project. He's going to tell you how we set about cleaning this data, kind of sorting out the spreadsheet, managing the images, and then getting them into the catalogue. And then I'll finish up. We'll just have some thoughts about what we've learned from the project and about how this work will kind of feed into our digitisation practice moving forward.
To start with, I'll give you a basic overview of our digitisation process before going into a little more detail and explaining some of the issues that we've had. First of all, the image is scanned. 3 copies are saved. One is a lower resolution version for use in the catalogue, and this gets copied into a folder on our Calm server. We describe the image in a spreadsheet called the image log and include the location of that image on the Calm server. Data from this spreadsheet is then imported into 2 different databases within our Calm cataloguing system. One is the catalogue itself, and one is the Calm image database, which is a database of the individual digital image files. Once the images are in the catalogue, they can be accessed in our Calm View online catalogue when that system is updated. The core component that makes this process work is the image log. This is a spreadsheet first used in 2007, listing all the images which we scan. Into the spreadsheet goes all the information which we want to add into our catalogue and image database, plus the file path, i.e. the directory and file name, so that the image can be accessed and shown in our catalogue. Most of the columns in the image log spreadsheet here are equivalent to a specific field in the catalogue, the image database, or both. There are fields to describe the item, such as the title and date, and there are fields which contain metadata about the image file, such as the date it was scanned. Each row relates to one image. There are also a small number of columns which are used just in the checking and importing process, but aren't actually imported into Calm. It's quite a massive spreadsheet now with 25 columns and over 3,000 rows. It's important that this spreadsheet is filled in correctly. Various things could go wrong if this is not the case. The catalogue titles and descriptions might not be correct or appropriate. Images aren't attached to the catalogue descriptions. Reference numbers might be wrong and could perhaps duplicate other reference numbers already in the catalogue. And data may not be consistent with the ISAG cataloguing standard or internal standards. As I mentioned, the log was started in 2007 with the intention of being able to use it to import our images into Calm and into an online catalogue. And some guidelines were developed, and several different people at the archive over the years added details of the images which they'd scanned. Unfortunately, in 2013, when I first examined the image log in the hope of being able to import the images into our catalogue, I could see this would be quite challenging. We have many problems, some of which are on this slide. For example, the file locations for a large proportion of the images were missing, the titles varied greatly, and data was inconsistent, and key information such as dates were often missing. A particularly significant problem was when references didn't match up with the catalogue. It was clear that there was no way that it could be imported into Calm in that state. So I looked at how the process of importing images into Calm would work and how the columns in the spreadsheet could be imported into Calm. I was then able to start the process of data cleansing of the spreadsheets. This was a lengthy process, as it was clear that I needed to check every item on the log, fix all the errors, and ensure that the references matched up correctly with the catalogue. Sometimes the references were completely wrong, and I needed to see if I could find the physical item to confirm the correct reference. And I often found that the titles were unsuitable and varied so much, so I ended up writing new titles for most of the images. After completing the data cleaning, I started the import. The import is carried into two entirely separate databases within the CALM system, the image database and the CALM catalogue. The image database contains the metadata about the digital image for use within the archive, such as the date scanned and where we can find the images on our network. It doesn't contain any information about any non-digitised items within the collection. The catalogue, however, covers the whole Sainsbury Archive collection, and this describes the physical item rather than the digital image. The first import goes into the image database. I did this in batches rather than in one go to reduce the potential impact if anything did go wrong. I used the mail merge method through Microsoft Word for importing into CALM. That's documented by the makers of CALM, so I won't explain this. I then do the import into the CALM catalogue using the same method. When we do an import into the catalogue, it creates a new catalogue record in CALM. Most of the images that we've digitised are not currently catalogued to item level, so the digitisation process allows us to create a more detailed catalogue for those items. For items already catalogued to item level or file level, where we believe an item level catalogue entry would be appropriate, then we will not include those in the imports but manually link those into the catalogue. We also have to manually link any additional images which are attached to a single catalogue entry. For example, scans of more than one page of a document or an image of a different side of an object. And we have a column in the image log to track which images have to be imported, which are imported through the automated process and which are imported manually. Once each import batch is done, I do a quick check just to make sure that nothing's gone wrong and that the images are attached. Usually there'll end up being a couple of images which don't appear because of a slight error in the file name on the image log, but if the problem's not too extensive, it's easy to manually fix this. We also manually add any index terms and authority links which we wish to add once it's been imported into CALM. And that's it. The new images will automatically be included in our CALM View online catalogue when it is updated by our IT department. So now we've now got just under 3,000 images in our image database. The images are attached to 2,400 catalogue records. That's about 10% of our whole catalogue. However, note that that does not mean 10% of our collection. Only a very tiny proportion of the collection is digitised, but it does reflect that the image digitisation process has resulted in more catalogue items. Laura will now conclude with some of the lessons that we've learned from this process.
So, yeah, lessons learned. So I think, so at present, we're kind of sticking with this method that Paul's described. So we're going to stick with the image spreadsheet, mail merge, and then batch update into CALM. And we are aware that there are some pros and cons to this approach. So we could, for example, scan images directly into the CALM database and kind of skip that process. But I think for us, the main benefit of this approach is that archival standard catalogue description doesn't need to be done at the point of scanning. And this is particularly important for us because we do have non-archive staff also undertaking digitisation work. So by their nature, Sainsbury's inquiries tend to be quite rushed through because they need their inquiries resolved within a very short time scale, and their inquiries can necessitate quite large amounts of material to be scanned quite quickly. So really, this approach kind of requires a different approach than a planned digitisation project would. It's really more a matter of kind of capturing the image and just passing it on to the company quite quickly. So scanning and metadata creation is often undertaken by different staff who might by necessity be working in a hurry. So by using the image log, descriptions can be checked at the point of import by an archivist, and this ensures consistency in the catalogue. Having said all that, we do require the image log to be completed to a decent standard. And I think really a major lesson that we've learned from this project has been the importance of thorough procedures and training. So while we did have a scanning procedure in place, it didn't really cover things like description, and there were some gaps around kind of file naming and some other issues as well. And this led to a lot of the problems that Paul had to tackle when he was trying to get the data on the spreadsheet usable for the catalogue. So to counteract this in future, this project has really prompted us to undergo a review of all of our image management processes, and that goes from scanning to search room copying to licensing. And we're kind of doing this in the round, so we're trying to look at everything simultaneously to try and spot the gaps in the procedures. So as well as documenting all this in a new procedure, in future, now that the image spreadsheet is functioning efficiently, we can now offer training to new staff when they join us. And we are actually anticipating some new staff from Sainsbury's coming over to us quite soon, so this will give us a chance to try out our new procedures. Another major point about our approach to digitisation, I think because it is responsive and we do scan material in response to inquiries from researchers and from Sainsbury's, this did leave us with quite a rich and extensive collection of digitised material that was kind of ready to go once we came to the catalogue project. And really this digital content that we held was kind of it was really a side effect of running our research service. And having this as part of our daily workflow, that meant that we haven't really had to commit to a large-scale digitisation project because it's all kind of been part of our day-to-day work. I think the flip side to this is that the catalogue is quite skewed towards the more visually appealing material in the collection. So we are probably overrepresented with digitised photographs, advertising, artwork and packaging, because that is the material that's tended to be scanned first because it is more visually appealing and useful for Sainsbury's and for researchers. And also because each image, when it's imported into the catalogue, that creates an item level record. So that does mean that the catalogue is more heavily weighted to item level descriptions for this kind of material. So it's somewhat misleading to researchers. We have a lot of item level descriptions for this kind of material. So I think the level of description through the catalogue as a whole is therefore somewhat inconsistent. So the final kind of lesson we're taking from this is to kind of carefully target our approach to description. So as we continue our work in kind of editing and improving the catalogue, we are really kind of targeting areas which might not be reached by our digitisation work. For example, kind of financial records and corporate records, which maybe have less visual appeal and so aren't really top of the list for digitisation by our researchers or by Sainsbury's. So by kind of targeting that material and by kind of enhancing the description and arrangement of those records, we can kind of ensure that they're as findable as their digitised counterparts. So, thank you. That's us.